Hello! Welcome to Sinner Saint Sister. This is a space where spirited, hurting, searching, faithful people come together and ask hard questions and listen to some really wise people share about how they have lived life deeply. If this episode spoke to you, I hope that you leave a review and subscribe. You can visit YouTube/Allison Sullivan for some really fun extras. I hope you hear something today that lets you know you are loved and helps you love one another. Welcome to Sinner Saint Sister. Cattle ranchers in Australia with thousands and thousands of acres of land, they could never dream of fencing in all that land in order to keep their herd. It would just be impossible. So instead, what they do is they dig really, really great watering holes that they know that the cattle will return to again and again and again. My third child, my second son, Blaze, he has proved to be difficult. And we see this more and more as his personality develops. But by difficult, I really just mean wildly independent and really adventurous. We blame ourselves. We named him Blaze. When he was a toddler, he rode his big wheel down the stairs. And what was funny about it was that as our friends responded with the appropriate shock and awe, what I really wanted to know was how in the world he got his big wheel in the house and up the stairs at 20 months old. I mean, of course, he rode it down the stairs, but how in the world did he get it up there? At about that time, we had built a fence around our house to keep the little booger centralized. And it occurred to me that we probably only had about a year before he taught himself to scale it. The idea is that walls or firm boundaries, they will keep someone reined in, right? Except when they don't. Because the truth is that it doesn't work. People, especially if those people are named Blaze, they're going to always jump walls. They're going to always climb fences. So how in the world am I ever going to rein Blaze in? How in the world am I going to keep Blaze from ruining his life? I can't. Blaze is going to climb that wall, but you know what I can do? Is I can dig a few inviting and welcoming wells that run deep with God's love for him, so that when he does climb that fence, he will always know where to return to when he's needy for things that are good and pure and life-giving. Blaze is going to get older, God help us. And Blaze is going to assert his independence, God help us. And he is going to take charge of his own life and swear that he knows better ways. And when he does, he's going to need mercy. It's critical, really. An open and loving relationship with Blaze, it's the well that will draw him home. It is beauty that will draw him home. I believe that this is what Jesus is trying to teach us, because Jesus lived among us and he took us places that captured our emotions and made us question our entire lives and why we live it. Jesus wooed people to God with self-sacrifice. It was self-sacrifice that made very naughty people want to be good. He dug deep, deep wells that people found beautiful, and they were irresistibly drawn to him. Respect, compassion towards others, and loving them selflessly, involving ourselves in their lives and listening to them. I can show my kids in these ways the beauty of relationship. Our well, it's about relationship. And I am learning so much about what healthy relationship looks like while trying to desperately shape these young people. Nothing feels more important to me. As my kids have gotten older, I've realized that I need more help than I used to do this well. One of my very favorite voices is Chazz Lewis. I'm new on my journey, and I sat at his feet in this interview. Have a listen. Friends, you might not know this, but I wrote a book. It's a spiritual memoir of sorts and puts a modern day spin on old parables that are still so applicable to our everyday lives. Judgment, forgiveness, evangelizing, heartbreak, joy. I'd love for you to grab a copy. Head on over to Amazon and look for Rock, Paper, Scissors by Allison Sullivan. Good morning, Mr. Chazz. I'm so excited you're here.
Excited to be here.
Welcome to Sinner Saint Sister. You are new to me, and your expertise would have come in really, it's coming in handy now, but it would have come in like really handy about a decade ago as I was just trying to train little people to be good humans. And now I'm starting to get into these teen years, and I am still able to use so much of your expertise to help me communicate well. I can't wait to dive into all of it. Before we get started and before we dive in, do you mind introducing yourself in a professional way? And then I'd like for you to introduce yourself in a heart way by telling us who and what you love. But can we start really quick with professional?
Yes. So I am a content creator. I am a educational specialist. I'm a teacher. I'm a parent coach, a speaker, previous Montessori teacher, worn many hats. Who I am and what I love. I am Mr. Chazz, and I really love to just help adults really see and understand children so that we can better guide children more effectively. And in this way, we have to really kind of see ourselves more too, and understand ourselves more, so that we're more able to really connect with these little people. And not even just little people. A lot of what I talk about is just, I mean, it's not really just for young children. It's just for people in general. But my focus is on how do we make this applicable for a young child, for a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 6, 7, and really kind of focus from birth to 12. So right on the cusp of that. I don't really talk about teens that much.
Well, I couldn't be more appreciative of your approach. I am curious your take on what people have latched onto so strongly. Why do you think you have become the internet sensation that you have?
I think what it is, and from what I hear from people reaching out and sharing, is that I take a lot of the brain science stuff and I make it real applicable and understandable and for an adult and without judgment, and try to do a lot, as much as possible, without triggering feelings of judgment or shame, and really empathize with everyone in the situation, because we're all trying our best, right? That child is trying their best, but you as an adult, as a parent, or as a teacher, you're trying your best too. We're all here on this journey together, trying to learn and grow and just be successful in life.
I'm a little bit sad that you said it first, because I wanted to weigh in on, I'm still going to. But I wanted to tell you what I think makes you so easy to follow, Mr. Chazz. And it is that I don't know that there's much that we hold more dear, than our parenting or helping to raise up another generation, whether it's in the classroom or in our homes. I think we recognize the importance. And so we hold it closely, but sometimes we can also hold it tightly. And you are showing us new ways. But Mr. Chazz, you're doing it with so much love and with so much gentleness. And you're not coming at us from this morally superior place. You are not shaking your finger. It's like you have knowledge. And I think that it's a really easy trap to fall into, that I have this knowledge and now it makes me haughty. Like now I'm upset with you or not upset, but I'm looking down on you that you haven't arrived to this similar place as me. And I heard you do this very specifically on a podcast. You were so kind, but someone that you were talking with was saying, I can't believe that this school is still doing this practice. And you said, but you know what? That's, first of all, not unusual. There's a lot of people still doing this. And I guess what you were pointing out so kindly is that it wasn't some willful ignorance or some act of defiance of, no, I'm going to do this way. It's that they haven't learned what we've learned yet. And we can handle that with care and compassion and bring people along in a loving way. And that is what people are going, oh, thank you. I don't feel shamed or argued into this new way of thinking. It's a marvel. You do such a good job.
Yeah. And, there is intention behind it, because what happens is when we start to feel, judged or shamed, and we kind of start to get in our emotional state, we get defensive. And so we're not going to be open to new information. We're not going to be open to hearing what someone of a different opinion has to say. We feel, judged or shamed because we feel attacked. And now it becomes this thing where it's me versus you, as opposed to me and you versus the problem. And, that is true for us as adults. It's true for us as adults, and it's, true for children too. And children get, a lot of times what happens is because of, their brain is in the very beginning stages of developing, they get triggered really easily and have a hard time self-regulating or calming themselves down. And so they get triggered. And then there's this thing called emotional contagion. That means that we have a tendency to catch each other's emotions. So they get triggered really easily. And then we get triggered by their triggeredness. And so we're both at kind of this emotional state, and it becomes this battle of wills, this battle of me versus you. And none of us is open to learning and hearing what the other person has to say, as opposed to me and you versus the problem, and trying to eliminate or at least reduce the judgment that a child may feel when they do something that doesn't meet our expectations, or that we wouldn't approve of. Because again, they are trying their best with the skills, knowledge, and resources they have access to in that moment. So how can we help them? How can we help people be in a better state to receive information? Judgment is one of the quickest ways to shut that off, and we see it all the time. On all you got to do is go on social media to see of this me versus you happening all the time,
and how ineffective it is.
Right. It's never happens where you see someone come in with a really strong, judgy opinion, and then someone else who has a difference of opinion say, you know what? I never thought about it that way. I'm going to change. What happens is people double down on their opinion, and now it becomes me versus you, and it's a fight. And at the end of it, no one feels good. We wasted a bunch of time, and actually Facebook's done some research on that, if you do come in with the judgy and the opinion and attacking, it's not going to change someone's opinion, or it's not going to help someone learn or have a conversation. That's not going to be effective. Facebook knows that, but they will continue that and support that because it's engagement, it's the looks and stuff, but all while knowing that it's ineffective.
Yeah, everybody wants to get their popcorn and check out the comment section. I mean, that's a good time.
Right.
I wonder if one of the things that helps you do this is just a natural gift of optimism about other people. Just assuming that this is a good person, that it, like you said, starting off, that is trying their best and just doesn't have the knowledge yet. And there's something about approaching things with curiosity instead of certainty that allows us to make room for other ideas. But I'm only going to feel curious if I feel like you like me first. And I feel so welcome in your presence as you're teaching, So
I would definitely say that it's as much as I wish it was a natural gift, it's definitely something that I've had to learn and improve on over time. And I've definitely gotten to this place now where I'm at, and I think there's still opportunities to improve, facilitating these conversations and inspiring others to step into curiosity instead of judgment. But it's definitely something that I've had to be intentional about and work for. And there's been times where I've gotten in, especially when I was younger, I've gotten into, internet fights and stuff like that.
Sure.
especially I'm kind of, I grew up, with social media. So like I
Yeah.
wasn't always as aware and as conscious as I am
Yeah.
right now, but it's something that you know, I, I hope me saying that is it inspires you. If that isn't something that you feel that you have a natural gift to, that to
Yeah.
know that it's something that we can improve on. And what stops us a lot of the times is our own emotions. It's again, it's that emotional contagious. We get triggered, and instead of taking a moment to like pause and self-regulate and get
Yeah.
to the higher parts of our brain, we
Right. Yes.
attack. We
Yes.
go on defense, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
how could you say that? Or you have that opinion, and now I feel judged and shamed because that's not my opinion. So you believe that. So what are you trying to say, that I'm not a good person too? Well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Actually, you're the bad person.
Yeah.
And I've been there before, um, and I have learned that there are more effective ways to have a conversation,
Yeah.
and to also say, hey, I see that a little differently, but I'm also
Yeah.
willing to
Right.
hear you,
Yeah.
and hear what you have to say, and
Yeah.
know that you're not a bad person, that you're just coming from a perspective. And one last thing I want to say on this is that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like, everyone is coming from their own stuff, right?
Mhm.
Their own different cultures, their own
Mhm.
different ways of being, their own experiences. And even outside of just the way that we've all differently been raised and conditioned, even outside of that, in that moment, someone could type something because they had a hard day that day. It had nothing to do with you, but they were having a
Mhm.
hard day, or having a hard moment, or they were hungry, or something as simple as that. It's just they were in a state and they typed something. And then by the time that you type something back, like you read it, you get triggered, and you see it like an hour later.
Yeah.
And by so you type something, oh, I'm triggered, I'm typing something. And they receive it like 2 hours later. They're
Yeah.
regulated and they don't even have that like perspective. Like,
Yeah.
I said that. But then, because the way that you responded, now they're triggered again too, and it becomes
Yeah.
this thing. If we just take a moment to pause, to self-regulate, and really just step into curiosity, and just know and trust that everyone's
Mhm.
doing their best,
Yeah.
I think we'd have much better conversations. And
Yeah.
not just for strangers on the internet, but also for our children
Mhm.
and even our teens.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I thank you so much for admitting or telling us that it is something that's fought for, because I think so often one of my very favorite writers, she was on the show a couple of weeks ago, but she's pretty well known for hospitality, and she was here to talk about how it's hard for her. And so here she is, considered an expert in hospitality, and very much considers herself an introvert and would rather be on her couch with a book. And it's like, I
mhm.
appreciate that so much, because now it feels really attainable for me, instead of just dismissing you like, oh, you were born that way and are going to die that way and, get to live that way. Now it's something that I can fight for too. So thank you for that. If we could go back to you, you mapped out a little power struggle between, our kids being so easily triggered, and then we're triggered by their triggering, and now we're in this battle of wills. Why, as adults, is the onus on us? Can
Mm.
you can you tell us a little bit about why this is our responsibility to step in with some good leadership?
That's a great question, and it's because we're the ones with the fully developed brains,
Yeah.
and we have more of a capacity for things like self-regulation. And
Hmm.
right now, in what is difficult for us as adults, is that when we were younger, we had adults who conditioned us with whatever they conditioned us with. And a lot of times it's whatever they were conditioned with. And it just got passed down and passed down and passed down. A lot of times unconsciously, like, this is the way I was raised, so this is the way that I'm going to do it. Whether it was something that was, and some of those things, and I talk about generational cycles,
Yeah.
and people, and someone like, what do you mean by generational cycles? And I just say they're just patterns of behavior. And sometimes there are healthy patterns of behavior, and sometimes they're unhealthy patterns of behavior.
Hmm.
And what I encourage adults to do is to be conscious of, what those patterns are, so we can be intentional about the patterns that we're passing down, and give them more of the healthy patterns of behavior rather than the
Yeah.
unhealthy patterns or the harmful patterns of behavior. And so the onus is on us because we're the ones with the fully developed brains, but it's
Yeah.
also difficult for us because we still got all that stuff that is
Yeah.
it's not just a different way of thinking. Yes, perspective, mindset shift is important in this process, but it's not just you just get a new piece of information and okay, now I can apply it all the times. The way that you were raised is conditioned in your body. It's a part of you. It's conditioned in your body. It's those reactions. It
Yeah.
becomes your default.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you're young and you're being, raised by adults and
Yeah.
your community. And so they're going to be just like we have all this stuff with us, and you might have to fight against some of that stuff, some of those unhealthy patterns of behavior to share and impart and model healthier patterns of behavior for your children.
Yeah.
And what that does is that they have a little bit of a leg up when they become an adult. It's because they have more skills like self-regulation and learning how to be empathetic and learning how to be, assertive instead of aggressive or passive, learning to see people with positive intent and know that everyone's trying their best. And so when they become an adult, they already have these skills more built into their body so that they're able to pass it on to their children and their children's children. And you don't have to uh uh unravel every unhealthy pattern of behavior in one go. I think about it like it's the metaphor that I give. It's like iPhones, right? It's like, and if you are all really on this journey and you are listening to the podcast so that you can learn and grow, reading books and practicing, that's huge. That's a huge step in innovation that we're able to, regardless of your, even economic background, there is this information of kind of self-growth and in the realm of parenting is more accessible than it's ever been before. And so this like this huge leap in technology that we're able to use.
More resources.
Right. That you can have, whether or not, and there's not a huge paywall behind this podcast right now that you're listening to is free, right? And people go out, especially post-pandemic, people have gone out and gotten degrees and worked out and done all this work, and now we're trying to share it in a way that is, accessible for everyone. And so you're on this journey and you're learning, and you might be like the first iPhone, right, in your family, right? And you may have been raised by a family of you may have been raised by a BlackBerry or the flip phone or a pager or the rotary phone, right? Everyone has their own, grew up, had their own. And so first pat yourself on the back for even going on this journey. Celebrate, woohoo, great, like really celebrate that progress. And in this course, there are going to be a lot of software updates, right? Where the hardware hasn't changed. You're still you and your body, but you're going to get new features. You're going to learn new skills. You're going to learn new tools. You're going to get better and better and better. But inevitably, you're not going to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. That they're going to, your children are going to take all the updates that you've been able to do in your lifetime, and they're going to be able to build off of that. And they're going to be like the second iPhone, and they're going to, and their children are going to be able to build off of, what they learn in their lifetime. So you're not just raising your children, you're raising your children's children, and it's building and building and building and building until eventually we're at the iPhone 22 or Google Glass or whatever, piece of technologies in the future. But it's not, you don't have to break all the cycles in one go. You do as best as you can and take it as far as you can in your lifetime, and you pass the torch on, and your children build off of it, and so on and so on.
Hallelujah. You're a beautiful human. Friends, can we just acknowledge the answer to that question? So I ask, why is the onus on us as adults? Mr. Chazz says, well, because our brains are different, but here's how I recognize why it's so hard. So here's your responsibility, but I understand this is difficult. It's just such a kind approach. Thank you so much. And I love the idea of perfection. It's not attainable. were just going to get better and better. And by the way, like looking back, my mom broke so many chains.
Mm-hmm.
She broke so many cycles. And I wonder how effective or what are your thoughts on this? And by the way, I'm totally off script. Like I'm not even looking at any of these things that I had for you, but I knew this was going to happen. How effective is that apology after the fact of, hey guys, I did this thing. It's my bad habit to do. And here's some of my background of why that's knee jerk. I'm sorry that that's my knee jerk. I am responsible to get above that triggering or that primitive or that first response. And I didn't do that in this instance. Here's how I wish this situation would have gone down. Does that kind of apology, does that kind of awareness and acknowledgement, does it undo what happened? What are your thoughts on?
Yeah. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that it undoes it. What I will say is that can repair some of the things that we do are harmful. There is an opportunity to repair. We all do things that are harmful at some point in time, right? We all make mistakes. We all oops. Oops is an acronym that we use. I practice conscious discipline, and the acronym for oops is our opportunity to problem solve, right? So we all oops, we all make mistakes. And what I will say is that there is so much power in making mistakes and repairing and teaching how to repair, rather than saying, just dismissing it and just saying, I did my best. You just deal with it. Like, you don't blame me, and kind of pushing away the accountability and the responsibility that you still had to manage your emotions and to respond in a helpful way, as opposed to react in a harmful way. Because we all have that responsibility, and our capacity as adults, we have way more of a capacity to do it than what a child does, because again, their brain is still developing. But again, especially if you had a lot of trauma, it will make it more difficult. What that repair does, when I think the most powerful thing about like those apologies and that repairing, is that it shows children, shows the people that you're raising, you're trying to teach how to make mistakes, because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to mess up. We're all going to do something harmful. And so instead of pretending like we didn't make a mistake, like I'm perfect, I never do anything wrong, and trying to set that as the expectation for the child, making it more difficult for them to accept their mistakes and learn from their mistakes.
Right.
Instead, show them how to make mistakes, show them how to take accountability, show them how to apologize and to learn from it and to problem solve from it, right? Because after that moment, and I think one of the most important things about apologies, one of the most powerful thing about apologies, is that at the kind of end of that, we want to come up with like, okay, I'm going to try to do something different next time. I'm going to make a commitment to do something different next time. And it might be something where we're trying to collaborate together, where it's like, okay, like, what do you think that we can do next time? So that we can get out the door by 8:00, so that we can get to bed, so that we can, eat our food in the time that we need to eat our food, so that, it may just be like, next time I'm going to commit to taking a deep breath and finding a different way. Right. And so there may be opportunities to collaborate and like, okay, let's work together on this. And sometimes it's just, things like, okay, next time, this is what I'm going to do. Because I said I was going to do it last time, but I got caught up, and I'm going to try again next time. And that's just so much power than, one, never making any mistakes at all, and two, more powerful than what a lot of, I think, our parents did, or just kind of not apologize at all, or do kind of like those like half now I don't even know if I'd call them maybe a quarter apology, like after they did something and then like you want something to eat, like
Oh, yeah.
and that was kind
Yeah.
of their way of saying like, okay, like let's move on, but without
Yeah.
actually acknowledging what happened and
Hmm.
the problem solving for next time.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, thank you. Um, so I still know so many adults that see apologies as weakness,
Yeah.
and so like, I mean, even just with Daniel Tiger, like my kids are watching Daniel Tiger when they were watching Daniel Tiger, and it's like saying I'm sorry is the first step, but then how can I help? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I know so many grown folks that need to hear this. Like, my goodness. Okay, so Mr. Chazz, so often we judge the quality of our parenting by how well our kids are behaved. It's like we know that parenting is this thing that we take really seriously. We want to do it well. And so we will often ask ourselves, are we good parents? And then that measuring stick is this perfect behavior. What's a better tool to measure how well we're doing than perfection in behavior?
Oh, wow.
Or why
This
is
is
that a bad tool? What's a better one?
Yeah, there's so I mean, I want to answer both. I'm going to start with why that's not a helpful um, measure
Hmm.
of parenting, and then I'm going to talk about what is a better way to see it, and then a better way to measure it. So, what is why that can be potentially harmful if our measuring stick is how much our children comply and obey,
Yeah.
is because when that's the measuring tool, uh, we can do lots of harmful things to justify to justify getting them to
Ooh.
obey and to comply, right?
Wow.
And it we can hit them, we can force them into isolation, we can we could and we could honestly abuse them. And because a lot of children who are abused are very compliant, right? And that's because it's rooted in fear and safety. And that's, I
Right.
think we would, regardless of how you will define abuse, uh, you can abuse a child and get them to
Yeah.
comply. It's
Yeah.
actually a very effective way to get a
Hmm.
child to obey and comply.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's not really a good measuring tool. And that is a trap that a lot of us can fall into. And
Yeah. It's
and
good.
and what makes that so partly so difficult is that not even just our own mental models of that, but also the judgment that we feel from other people when a child is not obeying, because that is often the societal expectation that children that it's still have been passed down. Children are meant to be seen, not heard, kind of
Hmm.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's been this societal's expectation, and
Yeah.
so that's still there, and we still feel that judgment, and so that can be really difficult to
Yeah.
overcome, and all the feelings that come along with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, what can be a more helpful way to think about things, or way to approach things, if it's like, instead of thinking, if this child isn't complying to me with me, or complying for me, or obeying me, that means I need more force and control, and to make them feel bad. Instead of thinking that way, instead we can think, if this child is having a hard time, maybe there's more information that I
Yeah.
can acquire to help this child,
Yeah.
move through this transition, to help this child um, uh, get their toy, back, or ask for a turn without violence, without hitting, without hurting.
Yeah. So building a skill versus eradicating I love that reframe of there's something to build here instead of something to take down.
Right.
Which yeah, I mean, and you still end up taking down the thing. It's just without any damage.
Right. And so what ends up happening is, and this is true for us as adults too, but for children, focusing on children right now, once we once we get those skills, once we learn new skills, and a lot of times before we're able to teach the skill, we need to gain some new skills ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't need those harmful skills. And so we'll just use the more helpful skills. And because we want to stay in connection, because as humans, we want to stay in connection with each other, that is just a human need because we want to stay in connection with each other, we will choose those more helpful skills as opposed to those more harmful skills, like hitting a child. Like, so, like, for example, like, and that's why I talk so much more about like these are skills that you can use as a parent, because a lot of times the parents who hit their children, it's not because they're bad people. It's because they don't know what else to do, and they have the skill set that they were raised with and mental models that they were raised with.
Yeah.
And they don't know what else to do, and you hear them a lot of times, I'll do it as a last resort, and that's communicating. I don't really know what else to do here, but if they had the other skills,
right,
and they felt confident in those skills, they would use those skills and they wouldn't have to use their last resort, which is hitting. And then
a bigger tool bag.
Right. Eventually, then there's no reason to, hit the child because you have all these other tools that you can pull out your toolbox to use.
That's
now
great.
a better way to measure it, it's a better way to measure your parenting is to see it. Are they using these skills? Are they able to, when they're in conflict, are they able to communicate?
Yes.
Are they able to set boundaries? And so I talk a lot about like using an assertive voice, right? And a lot of times, even us as adults, we will be either really passive, or this is what happens actually a lot of times. Sometimes we'll be really passive. Like, please, honey, please not do that. Please not do that. Please don't do that. Please don't touch your sister. I said, don't touch your sister. And then we go from really passive to really aggressive. But there's definitely a healthier middle ground there. That we talk about assertiveness, which is really, really more effective communication. And it's not the only skill to use, but how is, a way to measure it is if someone pushes your child or takes a toy from your child or writes on a child's paper, are they able to use those skills that you taught them? Are they able to say, I don't like it when you scribble on my paper, color on your own paper? Are they able to say that? Right? Are they able to see other children with positive intent and say that like, oh, they were having a hard time? Are they able to, do a little, practice breathing and starting to learn the skills of self-regulation? Are they learning, so it's really a better measure is what skills are they learning or are they able to apply? And know that it's a long game and that it takes time to build these skills, because it's likely that you as an adult, as a parent, you're probably building some of these skills too. And a really important part of teaching these skills is modeling it too. We can't say like, do as I say, not as I do. No, because they're learning from our example as well. That's not the only way that they're learning, but that's a huge way that they're learning and a really important thing. And so we have to learn those skills, model those skills, and be intentional about how we teach those skills in teachable moments, using things like books, using things like acting it out. And you definitely got to meet the child where they're at developmentally, because obviously a 1-year-old won't be able to say, I don't like it when you push me, please tap me on the shoulder. But there are ways that you can start building that in from the time they're very young. They can say one word sentence, right? They can say, might start just saying, putting their hand up and saying, stop, right? Very beginning stages of learning of how to set boundaries, right? And that evolves into, I don't like it. That evolves, I don't like it when you. That evolves, I don't like it when you do blank, please blank. And what we're doing is teaching them, and this is just one skill I'm talking about, what we're doing is teaching them to communicate, I'm not cool with that, treat me this way. this is the way that I would like to be treated.
You teach
And
people how to treat you.
exactly. And a lot of adults, again, have a hard time with that skill.
Yeah.
Um, but we can teach them from very young those skills.
And in your work, Mr. Chazz, you actually, I mean, I know you know this is just for people listening, but Mr. Chazz actually goes one level beneath the stop hand to have an adult say, "Do you see their face? They don't like that." And so, I mean, it can really start, this boundary making can even start with infancy.
Yeah.
I think I've cried like 3 times already. But again, like parenting is just this thing you hold dear and you hope you're doing well. And I've messed up plenty. And I have just some really embarrassing moments in my parenthood, but it is so encouraging to hear you say, are they using these skills? Because I have been so delighted with who these little people keep turning out to be. They impress me on the daily with their communication skills, and I'm really encouraged right now, and so thank you for that. So for so long, Mr. Chazz, we have used, we've talked a little bit about the force and control as opposed to cooperation or whatever, but we've talked about force and fear. For a long time, we were using a lot of reward and punishment, and we're even moving on from that, I think. And so I'm wondering, like, why it is we're moving on. What exactly is this gentle parenting thing? Because I would imagine it's something a little deeper than just like not yelling all the time or not cussing or whatever. But I do think that there is some confusion around the term gentle parenting. Can you tell us what that is? Because we're hearing it all the time now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of confusion around it because it's not really one exact thing. There is no gentle parenting central like resource where this is gentle parenting and that's what it is. It's really kind of more of a blanket term for moving away from uh, fear and shame based parenting and moving more towards connection and collaboration based parenting. I personally like the term conscious parenting more because I feel it's more accurate to what we're trying to do in terms of just being aware of what we are, of how we're parenting. I kind of talked about a little bit before, just being aware of the patterns of behavior that we're passing down to children. Well, what I will say on that note is that there is something, if you're looking for a program that is a program or philosophy that is very, I guess I would say, centralized, that is one kind of holistic thing that's got very specific tools that you can use. And I've been kind of talking about it a little bit here. It's called conscious discipline. And conscious discipline is something that you can use in a household and or use in a classroom. They have lots of tools and lots of they have lots of resources. They also have a lot of free resources, but they also have things that you can purchase, books that are aligned with it, that are teaching those skills. They have these things called feeling buddies that I use, and the idea is you teach children to regulate their emotions. They get to pick out the emotion that they're feeling. They talk to the emotion. And so they're not just becoming the emotion, but they're able to kind of separate, like, I'm feeling this as opposed to I am being this. And so they are trying to be really intentional about how they teach children these skills. So if you're looking for something specific, conscious discipline is something that is specific. Gentle parenting is kind of a blanket term for all those. Peaceful parenting, conscious parenting. So I would say it's not something super specific.
Thank you.
there was a question in there kind of about rewards and punishments.
Yeah, we're moving on. What are we moving on from, and what are we moving on to? I would imagine it's this, really heavy communication, collaboration, cooperation. What was wrong with rewards and punishment? Because I would imagine, Mr. Chazz, that you probably get some pushback. I don't know that that's true. I haven't gone to your comment section, but I would imagine that people get pretty set in their ways and feel strongly that this is the way it's always been done, and this is what works, and this is where I'll stay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And again, it always depends on a lot of things. Of like, the comment section is a very interesting place because everyone and their own backgrounds in the States coming from their own perspective. If you're looking to learn a lot more about this, there's more about this than what I'm going to be able to say in this short time that we have here.
Yeah.
I would very much recommend reading the book by Alfie Kohn, Punished by Rewards. And even in that title, you can kind of hear a little bit of the reasoning, because, rewards become punishments when you're not giving them. They're expecting the reward. You're giving rewards, and then you're not going to get a reward because whatever. That's really does become a punishment. And I get the rewards can be very motivating, and especially very short term. But there is a lot of research to suggest that they're not effective long term, and that when we try to reward behaviors into children or punish behaviors into children, that they only really effective when you're there, right? And then the message becomes the reason to do, the reason to not hit your sister, the reason to listen to me, the reason to be kind and helpful, caring human being is to get this reward, or to not get punished. Which kind of sets a not very helpful precedent, because there are going to be times where they're not being watched, or your rewards aren't going to be, they're not going to care about your rewards.
Right.
You as a teen, having teens, I think that's a lot of times where I think people start to see the breakdown. Really is that I was able to reward them with stickers and little things all the time. And now as teens, they're not really motivated by your rewards, or the rewards that they want are too big and are also still fleeting. It's still also very fleeting, and as opposed to building within them the true reason to do things, the true reason to be helpful, the true consequence of your action. It really clouds what the actual consequence is.
So good.
So if I am not hitting my brother or my sister, whatever, so I can get a reward, or so I don't get punished, then what happens when that is when I no longer care about the reward, right? You don't really have that built-in motivation or that discipline that's instilled within them. So there's a phrase in conscious discipline that we say is that discipline isn't something that we do to children, it's something that we instill within them. And
I love that. Yeah.
And also when we even think about the reality, because a lot of times we're like, oh, well, in the real world, there's punishments. They need to know the consequences of their actions. And, that's going to, make them commit crime or whatever. In reality, I did a video on this kind of breaking down the numbers. I don't have all the numbers, but in reality, most people aren't caught for their crimes, for their assault and the sexual assault, those things. On average, most people aren't caught. And so the reason you've been taught not to do those things is because you don't want to get punished. That's not in reality, you probably won't get caught. So, but the real reason to not do that is because that's a person with, thoughts and feelings who deserves respect, just like you too as a person.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves respect, and their consent matters, right?
Yeah.
And staying in connection with people matters to me. So I'm going to do more things that are helpful as opposed to things that are harmful, not
Yeah.
to get a reward, not to avoid a punishment, but because those have become my values.
Yeah. I have an
Um,
inner discipline.
right,
Yeah.
right.
That
And
is
so that's
so helpful.
that's what rewards and punishments can often cloud
Yeah.
and take it on. And one last thing I want to say on this is that sometimes you'll see you do punishments a lot. The focus becomes all on the punishment. Oh no, don't send me to timeout. Oh no, don't give me a spanking. Oh no, don't do this. Don't take this away. Don't take this away. And that
Yeah.
becomes a whole focus as opposed to this person that you hurt, or
Right.
the actual harm that you cause, or or the skill that now we can learn from it, because now this person, and this kind of goes full circle, this person, and we are in the habit of punishing and shaming. Now we come over to figure out what happened and try to build skills. They're immediately going to get into fear and shame mode and shut down and just be focused on, I don't want the punishment. I don't want
Yeah.
that's going to be the focus, as opposed to how can we handle the
Oh,
situation differently so that we can be successful next time. You
yeah.
didn't, you wanted your toy back and you didn't know what else to do. What can we do next time? That's where the focus should be, on learning those skills.
That is so, so helpful. Consider me educated. That is really, really wonderful. Thank you so much. My personality wasn't geared very succinctly towards rewards and punishment. I found that I needed it. It required a level of organization for me that I didn't naturally have. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't like a sticker mom or like a charty person or whatever. So
Yeah.
so I've always been better at communicating, but I've always felt a little shameful about it, that I didn't have, the organization required or the structure in order to have this, really, structured system of rewards and punishments. So, so I really see the value in what you're talking about over, and by the way, this wasn't like any kind of nobility on my part. It was, more laziness. I mean, it's worked out. Like we're doing okay, but that is really, really helpful. Okay, so to just kind of start to wind down a little bit, I do believe that we can talk in a way that our kids will listen, and that we can listen in a way that our kids will talk. And you have so many examples of phrases that either shut down a kid or, that make a kid completely quit responding. And then you have a lot of helpful things, alternatives. So I'm wondering if, just really quickly in Mr. Chazz style, you could take us through an example of each kind of child, like in this situation. And this can be quick, but like, what would you do with the angry child? And you can make up any situation you wanted. But so the angry child, the shut down child, the defiant child, the whining child. You don't have to do all of those. And I can help you remember, but I would love to hear just your example. What would you do with an angry child in your classroom?
Yes. So I got lots of, okay. Keep it succinct. Sometimes anger, especially with rage, need to get out the body and they need to move physically. So sometimes children need to kind of get it out through physical before we're able to really problem solve what the situation was and what kind of triggered that anger. And I actually have something in my classroom. I have a little active calming center where they can go and they can do that. They can it's like something, they can push the wall, they can stomp. There's this little thing that they can like flex and move. And there's some other things too that they can do, some repetitive Velcro things. So that's one
cool.
option. So
Wow.
that's one thing that I have like in my classroom to help children who do get angry and need that to kind of move physically. Another thing is, and this might be helpful for kind of a lot of what you just said, is you want it next time. You want it, acknowledging what they were trying to get you wanted, you were trying to, you were hoping, you wanted that toy. Next time, ask for a turn. You wanted my attention. Next time, tap me on the shoulder. You wanted, and so the you wanted is really the seeing them part.
Yes.
And really trying to see what they were trying to get. Like, this is the thing you're trying to get.
Some validation. Yeah.
Right. And that tends to open children up a lot more because like, oh, this person sees me, they understand. And sometimes we'll be wrong and they'll say, no, I want it. Man.
Yeah.
I want to tell a story. I'm going to try to tell the
oh, no, that's
version.
okay. That's okay. Yeah. Tell it.
I'm going to tell the short version. Hopefully I don't leave out any important details. There were two children. They were sitting there playing with Legos at a table, and another child went over and grabbed the bucket of Legos and pulled the bucket of Legos. The two children were like, "Oh no, you're not going to do that. We're playing with these Legos," and they're yanking it back and forth. And the child who approached them was about to go hit. I intervened. I brought the child to the side and I said, "You wanted to play with all the Legos. You wanted to play with all the Legos because that's what I thought from my perspective. They were just trying to get the whole bit of Legos. Like. He wanted himself." But he corrected me. He said, "No." He said, "I just wanted to play by myself." I'm like, "Oh, you wanted to play by yourself. Next time, grab a handful of Legos and bring them to the table and build with them. When you want more Legos, get another handful and bring them back to the table."
Yeah.
And so then I was able to actually solve the problem because he was able to tell me like, "Oh no, this is what I actually wanted instead." A lot of times just see that moment of taking that time to really see the child can be really impactful for them being open to the problem solving, the guidance that we want to give them.
But you've done the first step of allowing them to correct you, because a kid it's hard for a kid to start from nothing to say, "Hey, this what, that's probably a tall order to expect a little person to do that." But for you to even do it wrongly is at least a first step.
Yes, 100%. And sometimes it'll be right, sometimes it'll be wrong. And allow them to correct you, and allow space for that, so that and when they correct you, don't let that trigger you. Don't let your mental models of talking back trigger you to react, because that will make it more likely for them to shut down in the future. And so for a child who's shut down, breathing. A lot of times children who are shut down, they need connection. Connection has these 4 components, and we talk about this in conscious discipline too. Touch, eye contact, playful situation, and presence. And so sometimes when a child is shut down, we can, try to, and you don't have to hit all these components and every single time, but sometimes sometimes a hug. And what I do probably like 10 times a day is I will hold a child's hand and I'll look at them and try to get some eye contact. And there's different kind of ways to try to get eye contact and breathe. And we call that downloading calm. And when you breathe, they're going to be more likely to breathe. But you got to breathe first. You got to model it first and help them do it. And it's helpful to practice with breathing things ahead of time so that they have some skills they can try to access in that moment, because they're in a state where it's hard to access those skills. But if we practice ahead of time, it's going to be easier for them to do when it's in times where they're emotional. So those are some of the things. Shut down child, angry.
Can you hit whining for us?
Whining. So whining there's a lot to be said about whining. Really, I think our perspective about whining is important, and just knowing it's them really trying to express usually a need in a way that's emotional, and that's the skill that they are using, because that's the skill in their tool belt at that time. So if we're triggered, first regulate yourself, take a deep breath, regulate yourself. There's a couple different tools you can use for whining. You don't always have to, if it's something that's really triggering you and you want them to you want to help them to communicate in a way that's more helpful for them and more effective for them. One tool that I like to use is make your voice match mine, right? And so that they can model. And again, we have to be the one to to model that.
Make your voice match mine.
Yeah.
No, that's not what you mean.
Yeah. Right. So a lot of times that requires us to self-regulate first.
Right. Yeah.
And model for it. And then, and then have them kind of, practice that.
Yeah, that's really
and
good.
so that's one thing that you can do. Make your voice match mine. Regulate yourself, and also see it as they're just trying to communicate with the skills that they have.
Yeah.
And so I think a little bit about our perspective of whining can help us stay a little bit more regulated in the whines. And knowing that that's just your trigger. And it's important for us to be aware of our triggers so that we can regulate our emotions and respond as opposed to react.
Yeah. It's so obvious through your important work, Mr. Chazz, that this isn't just, these aren't just little people issues. These are people issues. And our own emotional health greatly affects our little people's emotional health. As we part, if there's anything that you really wanted us to know, like any great lessons you've learned along the way, or that you want us to take along with us as we leave this awesome session of information, what would it be if you could metaphorically take us by the shoulders?
Yes, this is going to be the most important thing I'm going to say throughout this whole conversation. Perfection doesn't exist. Avoid being a perfectionist, be an improvementist. The goal isn't to be perfect every day. The goal is to improve a little every day. Yeah. And so that's the most important thing. In all of this, I talked a lot about breathing and different skills you can use, assertiveness, and you're not going to be perfect at teaching it. You might feel like, that makes a lot of sense. I got it. I'm going to use this. I'm going to apply it. And it may not go perfectly the first time that you do it. And you may have to, learn some skills, or it may go really well one day and not so well another day. And in this moment, it may be helpful. Another moment, maybe another skill is required, or there's more learning that we need to do, or, it's just know that perfection doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. So in perfection, trying to focus so much on perfection will stop our growth, because we'll shame ourselves. We'll beat ourselves up, and we'll take our oops as opportunities to shame ourselves instead of our opportunity to problem solve. Yeah. Oops stands for our opportunity to problem solve. Avoid being a perfectionist, be an improvementist.
Thank you so much. You are an absolute national treasure, Mr. Chazz. I'm so grateful that I know you, that I found you, that I can dive into your work. Can you tell all the listeners where to dive in as well?
Yes, you can find me on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram as Mr. Chazz. You can also have a YouTube channel for kids, and if you search Mr. Chazz, you'll probably be able to find it. That's where all my songs and stuff that's more directed to kids is. And I also have a podcast, Mr. Chazz's Leadership, Parenting, and Teaching Podcast, where I help you, where I introduce you to people that can help you on your parenting, leadership, or teaching journey. And so definitely check that out. And that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much. You are brilliant and kind and compassionate and empathetic, and you are changing generations, and I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Sinners, saints, sisters, do you need a speaker for your event? Do you need someone to lead your retreat? It would be all my joy to serve and spread God's love to you and the people you gather with compassionate leadership, Bible-based teaching, authentic life stories, and a lot of laughter at heart. You can reach me at sinnersaintsister@gmail.com. Hello, Beefinator.
Hi, Beef.
So Chazz Lewis is a new find to me. I found him
so good,
completely delightful. Mm-hmm. He is you and I talked a little earlier about consistency being important to you in a person. He is so consistent in his message and in his approach. Like, I was listening to a conversation with him, and someone was kind of trying to, I don't know, kind of lure him to a side of indignation. And he was so consistent that, like, we're all learning.
Wow.
And I was so appreciative because when I think of these parenting moments where I have completely lost it, which I think we should share examples of in a second. It's like, I wish that he were here. Like, I'd love to take you through these, Mr. Chazz, and like help me find a better way. What is a parenting moment where you feel like you have lost it and maybe that has left a mark?
Okay. So easily it was the terrible, no good, very bad play date of 2012. So I had one kid at the time, and I had a play date, like an organized play date where I invited the mother and the child over for the play and the chat and this beautiful time. There was probably like special snacks made, and like my house was perfect and that whole thing.
One of those.
Yeah. And so they come in, and for some reason, like, we were in the room where the little boys were playing, and I'm like, so how did you meet your husband? Like just getting to know this new adult. And my son starts to lose his mind because the other 2.5 or 3-year-old is playing with more than one toy at a time. My son's wanting to take one thing out, play with it independently, and put it back. And then, so this kid's getting out a bunch of other stuff. Miles is feeling like it's out of control or messy or whatever. He is screaming at the kid, telling the kid that he wants him to leave, telling me that he wants the kids to leave. And I'm like, what are you guys doing, this weekend? Like, I'm trying to like keep the conversation going. I take Miles out of the room because I'm sweating, and I take him to my bedroom and I open all the drawers because he's like having a problem with like the chaos of it or something. I don't know. I still don't know, Mr. Chazz, what was wrong. And so I start opening the drawers of my like dresser and throwing clothes everywhere. I'm trying to show him that like, here's mess. This is fine. I probably I made it 1,000 times worse. Right now, I've just created more chaos somewhere else. But I thought I was trying to say like, here's a mess. We're fine. We're good. This looks crazy. Cause of course, who throws all their clothes around their whole room? And so I'm thinking that this is going to be helpful to show him that I'm calm. There's mess everywhere and I'm going to clean this up later. Anyway, we go back to the play date. He cannot recover. It is a nightmare. She like leaves. I'm whatever. I called you afterwards sobbing. My child is broken. I don't know how to fix him. He lacks empathy and compassion. He will never have a friend. And I'm a terrible parent.
Right.
I'm sweating as I recall it.
Right. I know.
So bad.
One of the things that Mr. Chazz talks about is when we parent for an audience.
Yes.
How much of our parenting faux pas have happened because we feel like other people are watching and judging us.
I would say 98% of mine.
Yeah.
For sure.
See, I remember you and I have talked about this because you were like, you're so lucky that your kids only misbehave at home. So I don't have much experience with that. Mine is always that I have become overstimulated. Like things got too loud or things got, it's that I have become overstimulated and my lose it happens in those moments. And it looks like rage, So like things that I haven't had time to think through because I'm so reactive.
Right.
And so what I love about Mr. Chazz, if we were to present him with, here are these moments that I feel remorseful about, is that he would, in a way, reparent us. Like he would take us to our own training and heal something in our own selves so that we could come at this situation a little more healed, So I don't know what that is for you. If you were calm while you were doing it, like there's something about that feels kind of fine for me. If you were like losing control and like sweating and yelling, I mean, that's probably, something
I was
that could
sweating
be.
and yelling on the inside and just devastated and felt like I literally was like, he's broken and he's a bad person. And this is it was just like that. I don't know. I still need Mr. Chazz to tell me what I should have done.
Right.
And
well,
I mean, I'm sure I was supposed to my child was struggling with something and I was supposed to talk to him about it maybe, or like, he's just a jerk and I needed to give him a more serious consequence. I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
It just was,
Yeah.
it was a very, very terrible play date.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any advice because I feel like I am brand new learning about all these new approaches. And I loved hearing all of his thoughts on, the things that we've been doing for a long time and have kind of found some new science around. So I'm a forever fan. Everybody go hit follow over there, Mr. Chazz. He is so delightful.
Yes. Can't wait to hear more from him for sure.
Yeah. See you, Beef. Love ya.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. A very special thank you to all guests and sponsors. A really special thank you to Taylor Schroll for mixing and editing. For more content, you can head over to Instagram at Allison M. Sully and TikTok at Sullivan Family TikTok. You can also check out Forte Catholic and subscribe there, where you have a 25% chance of hearing me co-host. I am so grateful for all of the love and support that we offer each other here.
Today's show was a production of Allison Sullivan in conjunction with the Forte Catholic Podcast Network. For more great Catholic podcasts, head on over to fortecatholic.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.